Hi, I'm Nina Samuels, and apparently you have nothing better to do with your time, so you are listening to the Holy Shoot podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Holy Shoot Wrestling Challenge. The Holy Shoot Wrestling Challenge is a wrestling quiz show where the arguments, not your overall opinion, wins. Each week, our guests will go head-to-head over 5 rounds, and debate topics that are either relevant to right now or will be themed. After that, our opponents will go to the 3-count round. The 3-count round, which acts as our speed round, is where 2 competitors are forced to pick between one of 2 options and will have 30 seconds to say why their option is the best. Again, it is not what they choose wins, but their argument. Simple, got it. The winner will be whoever has the most points at the end. In the event of a tie, after 8 rounds, we will go to a mystery tiebreaker. Right, the following contest is scheduled for one fall, and it is a singles match. Introducing first, from Sunderland, Tyne and Weir, he was a once great one, Iron Mike Remington.
I will be the great one again after this episode, I assure you.
And we'll explain why he is no longer the great one, just in a little bit. And his opponent from Woking, Surrey, he is Jason JC Cornette Norris.
I'm a bit confused. I normally get introduced first, which is what you do with the heel, and I'm actually being introduced second like I'm the babyface. I don't know how I'm going to have to cope with this match. I'm confused already.
I don't know either. It's just basically, I'm basing this on an old script, and Mike's introduction was first, so deal with it.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. It's good to have you back. And before we talk about your adventures with Asuka this afternoon, Jason, which I really want to go into, Mike. So there's a mystery. There's an episode that's missing.
Yeah, look,
absence.
If I can explain this, yes, there was a debate show that happened as part of a tournament in Rio de Janeiro that Chen ended up winning. I have no memory of this. There is no memory on the internet. Nothing was posted. But yes, Chen is officially 0-0-1.
I don't think that's how that works. He's basically he's won a match essentially, and because of technical difficulties, we're unable to publish the episode in such a Chen-like fashion. If you're new to the show, Chen is essentially the Heath Slater of this podcast. He never wins, and he actually did win for once. Had a very good speed round where he came back from 3-1 down to win 4-3 against Mike. Sam was the other competitor, and he was not very happy. Coincidentally, he was editing the show.
See what happens when I disappear for a few weeks? Do jet set across the world?
Well,
just falls apart.
Is it like one of those?
You could have worked. You could have worked from Lanzarote, mate. So
well, I was in Munich, then I was in Seattle, then I was in Lanzarote. I've been everywhere. I just it would have been hard to find the time for you guys. I've been training. I've been getting ready for this show.
Mate, I've been to Oxford, and there's another Exeter. I've been to 2 places recently that were outside of the M25. So
Well, I'm back now, ready to beat Mike.
I've been to the off license.
And I'm drinking Iron Brew. Iron Brew, Iron Mike, and Iron Man Jason. Jason, do you want to go into your adventures with Asuka quickly?
Oh, it's just interesting that Asuka reached out to me on Instagram this today, and it's clearly Asuka. She's got like 1,000 followers and posts lots of pictures of Asuka, and she's just interacting with me, saying that she really wants to get to know her fans better. We've been exchanging messages all day. I'm thinking it's going to end up with us all getting free tickets to WrestleMania and maybe me and her getting married in the ring. So we'll see how that develops over the rest of the day.
And what's her username? Is it WWE Asuka or is it?
I think it's Asuka_WWE or something like that. It seems legit.
It's WWE _Askua. So
Askua. Yeah, that's legit, right?
Yeah, completely legitimate. Completely legitimate. So shall we reveal the conversation later in an After Dark segment?
After Dark segment, I like the idea.
Yeah. The After Dark. Anyway, that's enough banter. I think it's about time we get on with the show. So this week, our questions will be about Le Champion. Everyone get a glass of a little bit of the bubbly because we are talking about Chris Jericho.
Get my bubbly now.
One of the greatest wrestlers of all time. So great, we're going to just get straight into it. As you know, Chris Jericho is still the AEW World Champion after defeating Cody Rhodes at Full Gear. So, my question to you, gentlemen, is how should Chris Jericho lose the AEW title? Jason, I'm going to start with you.
Oh, okay, cool. So things are escalating in AEW at the moment. It's getting pretty dangerous. There's some really high stakes matches, some violent matches. I think John Moxley's the man leading the charge here. He's just getting more and more vicious. The matches he's had so far, that match with Kenny Omega, I think he's the man to step up. But I think Jericho, he's not going to want a weapons brawl. He's going to want to settle this in the ring. He's going to demand him and Moxley have a straight wrestling match, which is a chance for Moxley to remind us he can actually wrestle. While this is happening, there can be lots of interference from the Elite and the Inner Circle, which cancel each other out, and they can set up a feud for some sort of War Games knockoff in AEW. And I ultimately see Mox winning the belt in the middle of the ring, probably in Double or Nothing 2, so that Jericho gets a long reign, and then Mox can go out of that and start feuding with the likes of Pac.
So quadruple or nothing then. And Mike.
Yeah, I'm going a little bit different here. I think we've got to look at what's already happened. Jericho did beat Kenny Omega at Double or Nothing to get the title shot in the first place. He then wins the title by beating Adam Page, and at the last pay-per-view he's defended against Cody. So what I'm proposing is, amongst other title defences, over the next few months, maybe on Dynamite, he gets 2 singles matches, one against Matt Jackson, one against Nick Jackson, which leads Jericho to his next gimmick of many, which is Elite Jericho. He's beat every member of the Elite. He can do so much wordplay on that. And brings us to Double or Nothing 2. We have the Casino Battle Royal. 21st entry is Marty Scurll, who wins it to get a title shot later in the night and goes on to beat Jericho, the forgotten member of the Elite.
Ooh. So, John Moxley versus Marty Scurll. Fight!
See, my issue with that, because I looked at the idea of what's Marty going to do, but my main issues were he's quite a small lad and he's a heel. He doesn't work as a babyface. So I know he's a member of the Elite, but he's always been the heel member when they've been doing things in Japan. I don't see how, there'd be that initial pop, but ultimately Marty's a heel, and I can't see how you do him and Jericho and then have that feud going and have him winning the belt.
I think he's the heel that the crowd love to cheer and boo at the same time. It's part of, a lot of talk's been later about true heels and true faces. We don't need to have the old traditional face, good guy, take vitamins, drink his milk. I think Marty Scurll, yes, he is a little guy, but Jericho's not the biggest. They can put on an amazing match. And I think the whole idea of him having beaten every member of the Elite and forgotten Marty, he does feel like the forgotten one, the one they left behind. So if he came in, the reaction would be great and they can have a great match.
See, I think with my choice, I've gone for John Moxley because he's the guy that they've almost been sleeping on him a little bit. They finally pulled the trigger by having that match with Kenny Omega, and they've been holding back on him, it feels like, in some ways. I just feel like he's the guy that you want to make as that face of the company next year, especially when you start imagining, sure, WWE will probably put Roman Reigns into the world title picture for Mania. Around the same time, you put Mox into your world title picture and make him your champ. I think that will get them more love and appreciation from the fans. Here's the guy we really want from the Shield. It's John Moxley / Dean Ambrose, not the other two guys. I feel like that's the way to go.
Yeah, I think eventually they may get there, but not on the next title reign. I think the idea of Mox at the minute being somebody that you need to be really hardcore and insane to go against and have these incredible matches, they can go a good 6 months to a year of having these.
I don't know. I just think Moxley. How do you build on what he did with Omega already? They can sort of drag it along for a little bit, but ultimately you need to say, John, Mr. Moxley, you need to actually show you can wrestle and have that match. Him and Jericho, they've done matches in the past. You know that'd be a great match. That's, if you look at it, that is their WrestleMania, is Double or Nothing. You want your big match on that show. Those are the two names you put in.
Yeah. You've just said it. They've had matches in the past. I think we want something new and something fresh. And the point of giving Jericho the title in the first place has to be to elevate somebody new. We don't need to give a former world champion, Jericho. That defeats the whole point of giving him the title. Whereas someone like Marty Scurll, who, he's been in Ring of Honor, he's been in Japan, but he hasn't really been exposed to the mainstream audience. That would be a perfect way to show what he can do.
I think Jericho can elevate people in the build-up to Double or Nothing. He can have these. He's got a few months. He can have matches against, I guess, the fresher faces of AEW. And you know how good Jericho is. He will put someone over by still beating them. He can have some amazing feud with someone. You think like back when Daniel Bryan first came through NXT and WWE, the reason he got attention is because he lost an amazing match to Chris Jericho. Jericho's done it in the past. He can just have those matches and ultimately still win, but put people over in some way. People are going to get the credit for having those matches with him. I think Moxley is the man. If you look at the crowd reaction, he is the man. He's the one they need to be putting that belt on and riding that for next year.
He might be the man, but I think we need a long-term idea here. We've got Jericho having already beat Omega, beat Page, beat Cody. All we've got is the Matt and Nick Jackson left, and then we've actually got what Jericho does best is pick a word. And imagine what Jericho could do with Elite. Imagine the promos, the little references that he could be.
I mean, I get it, but when I talked about my match, I ultimately have Mox beats Jericho and the Elite cancels out the Inner Circle. And in my head, Jericho then focuses on the Elite. I see Kenny and Cody versus Jericho and his muscle, Mr. What's he now, Swagger or Hager? Mr. Hager. I can imagine that's what you build around, and you do a proper faction war between those two, and they don't need the belt to be involved in those two groups.
Well, I think Marty Scurll would get that great reaction when he enters the Battle Royal. He comes in 21st. It wouldn't be expected. They would not have built towards it. And suddenly, I think if the commentary team, as he was coming, suddenly realised he is the missing member of the Elite, it would just add so much. It would give the promos something extra. And I think nobody would expect it. I think even sitting here now, everyone's expecting Mox to be a top contender. And he will one day, but just give us something we're not expecting.
Yeah, I mean, I like Marty. I just don't see how you make him the champion of your brand if you want to be seen as serious competition to the WWE and New Japan.
He definitely is serious competition, and he's new. He's not. He hasn't come from WWE. I think. Imagine they give the title to Mox next. That'll mean the first two champions have both pretty much been made by WWE. Why don't they do something a bit different and have a non-WWE guy as their top guy?
I mean, I'd look at that and say, Moxley, you could say he was made in WWE, but he's rebelled against it so much, and he's trying to show us the real Moxley at the moment. And that can still be a good straight wrestler as well as a hardcore guy. I think he's trying to establish that I'm not a WWE product. I was a great wrestler and a great performer before that all happened.
I don't think he's as a greater wrestler as Marty or Jericho can do. I think that the match that they can do can be impressive.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I go with Moxley because he's a draw, he's a big star, he can do all the type of matches for you, and I think him and Jericho, that's their triple diamond 5-star classic half an hour proper wrestling match.
Yep, and I go with Marty because I think that's the whole point of giving Jericho the title. He can elevate someone new instead of just passing it between another former WWE champion.
Okay, that was a really strong round, guys. I really like both your answers. I think, John Moxley, he's a fucking man, and I think I really like the story behind the Elite, and I think, both answers are great, but of course it's about the argument, and both were also really strong arguments, and this one was tough. I'm going to give the point to Mike. Just because I think he makes the argument better about we've seen Jericho versus Moxley before in WWE. I mean, to Mike's discredit, he could have really laid into you and say that Ambrose Asylum match was garbage, because quite frankly it was. But we've seen that match before, and it really plays to Jericho's strength with the promo of the Elite. I was sold on that, the freshness of the feud, and also the fact that Jericho has a history of putting people over, and I like the fact that I think you put that belt on him, and I also really like the line of imagine where you have two WWE champions, former WWE champions, as AEW champions. That would be. So I was really more sold on Mike's argument, but strong argument, Jason. Just unfortunate loser there. So question number 2: what is Jericho's greatest gimmick? Mike, I'm going to go with you first.
I've gone for the gimmick of what I term jealous Jericho, where he was jealous of certain people, and he would often use idolization that would slowly morph into jealousy. Saw us have feuds with Goldberg, Jeff Hardy, and of course his very first feud with Shawn Michaels. I think the whole what he portrayed, I think, actually showed a little bit of the real him. He was always a little bit jealous of what other people were given that he felt he should have been given, but didn't really. And he had the ability to bring his real life thoughts into that gimmick.
So 2000 to 2003.
Yes.
Okay, cool. And what about you, Jason?
I'm going a bit older. I'm going for the Ayatollah of Rock and Roller, Chris Jericho, from the 99-2000 period. For me, this was one of the hottest times in wrestling. And what I love about this period of Chris Jericho is I think people forget he was so over during this time period, and he was the Daniel Bryan of his era. Back then, Austin and Rock, they were the big stars. You expected them to win. With Jericho, he often lost. He was the underdog. You wanted him to win, but you didn't know he was actually going to win. So he was actually undersized for the era. I was like watching some of his old Jericho matches from that time period. The promos he was cutting, some of it's a bit dated now maybe, but during the time, he was so over. He was funny. He was a hell of a promo. So for me, it's the Ayatollah of Rock and Roller.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I wouldn't have gone for either. So you convinced me, guys.
So I think with yours, you're talking about from just after the time he first comes in with so much anticipation and such a big build-up to Y2J. I think after his initial confrontation with The Rock, it was a bit of a letdown. I think WWE or F at the time did what they always do when they saw an incoming WCW wrestler. Let's push him back down a bit. Let's have him lose. I think he lost his debut match to the Road Dogg. Like you say, you never knew whether he was going to win or lose. He was kind of a nothing entity after that first few weeks.
On that point, exactly. There is that time period, but the Ayatollah of Rock and Roller really took off after that time period. We all know Jericho's documented, but he came in with the big push, and then he kind of got pushed down a bit because they thought this guy can't actually work. He had some matches with the likes of X-Pac. He had that run with China. He had the matches with Kurt Angle, Benoit, all these guys during that time period. He showed actually after a few months where they pushed him down, his actual ascension is what got the crowd behind him. That builds into the actual Ayatollah Rock and Roller, which came after that slump, and it goes through 99-2000, where actually he's the man who beat Triple H for that Phantom title switch, and that is one of the loudest reactions I've probably ever heard on a Raw TV show. Everyone wanted him to be keeping that belt. It was out of nowhere. That was the character of that time. That is what got him over. Whereas your gimmick, Jealous Jericho, yeah, I mean, you've not really explained it much. What was so good about this?
Well, first of all, I think Jericho is much better as a heel as a face. I think we can all really agree on that. And it was good that it took
I
things...
don't know if we all agree. I'm telling you that his best run was when he was a face.
Okay, so you're wrong. But anyway, his feud against Goldberg was built off a real life animosity that he was promised. He was going to have this title match against Goldberg in WCW, which didn't happen because of backstage politics, which is the reason he came to WWF in the first place. So they have the feud there, and then they have the feud with Michaels, which at the time was about as good as it could possibly get in terms of feuds. The fact that he idolized him and grew up wanting to be like him, and that slowly turned into jealousy. He didn't want to be like him anymore. He wanted to be the next one of him, and that led us to the WrestleMania match, which was an all-time classic. I think it worked so well because Jericho has always been best to play in the bad guy, and as we're seeing now, when he's the entitled bad guy and he's the I should have got this and that it should have been me type storyline, that's when he's at his absolute best. Whereas yours is him, I mean, Ayatollah Rock and Roller, yeah, it was a catchphrase that rhymed, but other than that, he didn't really do much. Sometimes he won, sometimes he lost, sometimes he got cheered, sometimes he didn't. And the whole feud with China didn't really give us memorable matches. At least mine has some memorable matches to remember today.
So, I mean, I'm going to talk about, memorable matches. The stuff with China, that was historic. That was historic. That was memorable. The match with Kurt Angle and Benoit at WrestleMania, that was an amazing match. He did some great work during this time period with top stars and mid-card as well. Because of his position, he worked with a wide variety of opponents while getting hugely over and just he sold so much merch during that time period. I mean, I remember watching it back in the day. He was over as hell. I'm talking about your one, but I mean, Jericho, yeah, it's interesting. It kind of played into his actual thing he did in WCW before he left there, where he was a bit of a crybaby. It was an expansion on that, really.
I don't think it was crybaby. I think it was all about conspiracy and people being against him. But just on the back of what you just said, yes, his matches with China were historic because of China, because she was the first Intercontinental Champion and you know what it meant. And yes, the match at WrestleMania was historic because Kurt Angle lost both belts. So your history is based on what other people did and achieved and moved on from. I don't think Jericho was an integral part of that.
I said, like, basically he carried China through those matches and actually was like one of the first person to really do some interesting things with her. The match with Angle and Benoit, he held his own in that. I've referred to the match he had with Triple H during that time period as well, with the Phantom title change. It was the start of his push where he started winning the IC belt. He had good matches during that time period. And I think when you're talking about your good matches, you're referring to, he had that great match with Shawn Michaels at Mania. And then, are you trying to tell me he had a good match with Goldberg?
Of all the Goldberg matches, it was one of the best. And, he also had matches with Jeff Hardy in that time frame where, again, he was jealous of the fact that the crowd idolized Jeff Hardy when they should be idolizing him. It was Jericho at his best, where he was the egomaniac. It all should been me. And he plays that role better than any other, I think. And the way mine came to an end with the match with Christian and Trish Stratus at WrestleMania as well, that was kind of a double turn where Christian turns heel and Jericho turns face. It was kind of like a means to an end. It was a nice storyline that came to an end and let him move on to something fluidly.
Right. One closing point from each of you about why I should consider it yours the greatest gimmick.
I think, looking at Jericho's gimmicks, you've got to look at when he was the most over and interesting. And he's had a long career, but I cannot think of a time when he was as supported by the audience at every show he was at than when he was during this time period, with the funny catchphrases, with the insulting his opponents, with the misspeak, with the great wrestling. This was his time.
Mike?
Yeah, I think that we're talking about greatest gimmick. I think the greatest thing about Jericho's gimmick is the ability to constantly reinvent himself. Jason's gimmick, it's great, but it's the first one that the mainstream audience saw, whereas mine, it was he'd gone through a gimmick, he'd gone through his catchphrases, he went away for a little bit and came back with something different, and that was what's really great about Jericho, is his ability to make new gimmicks.
So, as you can tell, I was obviously disappointed by your answers.
What's your choice, Brad? What was your favourite?
I don't know. I've always felt that Jericho was a guy that always progressed, and I really liked his Alpha Club stuff in New Japan. It was a different side to Jericho. It was a vile side of Jericho, a violent side of Jericho. It's like that proper fucking egotistical rock star that I always wanted to see from Jericho. So I was always glad to see that. And I'm not saying that as like the biggest New Japan watcher in the world, but I think he brought a lot of eyes to that product. But I'm not fighting, so it doesn't matter. For me, the obvious winner here is Jason. Every counter argument Mike gave was weak. And whilst he made some good counterpoints against you, Jason, I think you defended yours really well. I completely don't see how, even though, sure, it's China's accomplishment or Kurt Angle was moving on from the titles, etc., Jericho is an integral part of that. I think the ability to really only reference one great match is Shawn Michaels and, the Goldberg match and Jeff Hardy match, Nobody remembers them, if I'm honest. You know, I think, yeah, the point definitely has to go to Jason. So it's one apiece at the end of round 2. So question number 3: what is Chris Jericho's greatest match? Jason, you get to go first.
Yeah, well, I just made reference to this. I mean, I was looking at Jericho's history, and he's had a lot of good matches, but the one that stood out to me, and I've got to like bring up the elephant in the room here, is Angle v Jericho v Benoit from WrestleMania 2000. We're not going to talk about Benoit as a person, but I need to just make reference to this because it's more about Jericho than anything else, and Angle. So this is peak Jericho for me. He's a younger babyface. It's all about the Jerichoholics, the idol of rock and roller. He's brash. He's insulting his opponents. Jericho, you know, has acknowledged that, you know, you have to talk about Benoit at certain points, but we're not going to dwell on him. So, but you look at the talent, it's still some of the best talent in terms of all-time ring work, and it's actually the best three-way match I've ever seen. I rewatched this today. They don't do the lazy thing of having two people in the ring while someone's outside for ages. It's generally all three of them in the ring, unless it's actually for the falls. And the reason this is really good is it's 14 minutes long. It's a really fast-paced 2 out of 3 falls match. The story at the start is Angle has to keep breaking up the pins to retain both his belts. So there's some good logic into the way he tries to break things up. But as a kid, I did not know who was going to be winning this. And from Jericho, you see the double powerbomb. You see a proper lion tamer. You see him win with the springboard moonsault. There's ref bumps, title shots like you would expect during this era. But ultimately, the star of this whole match is Jericho. From the intro, where he's introducing everything, and whose music plays at the end.
Okay. I've gone for a pretty personal answer here, because not only is this what I'm answering as Jericho's greatest match, if the question has been what is the greatest match, this would have been up there with me just for how it made me feel at the time. And I'd dropped out of wrestling for a bit, but come back in. I've gone for the last man standing match of Fully Loaded 2000 against Triple H. Always absolutely loved the fact that Jericho came into that as massively the underdog. Triple H was in the middle of one of his best years. He was the, you know, unbeatable. He was the choice to be the next one. And Jericho came out and did an absolutely amazing performance. He took beating after beating, but kept on coming back. And then that second where he managed to do the sling slot into the post and Triple H is bleeding, it makes you think Jericho can actually win. They go on to have a classic match after that. And I just think the build-up, the performance, and the aftermath of that story was beautiful.
Fight.
I think saying yours is the best triple threat match you've ever seen is a ludicrous statement. It's it's like I say, it's only memorable for the triple threat main event of WrestleMania 20.
Can we please stop mentioning Benoit? I mean, seriously, this is controversial.
You have to acknowledge, it's not controversial. Chris Jericho has acknowledged it multiple times and in his own books. His career was intertwined with Benoit. A lot of his best matches are with Benoit. He cannot go back and watch those matches because of what happened. That does not mean we cannot reflect on what was a great match in terms of Jericho and Angle and Benoit being the third man in it. I think it's wrong to say we can't talk about it for that reason. We have to accept that this was an amazing match for the men in the ring at the time.
You know, I agree. It's really hard not to mention Benoit.
I think there's just many great matches that could have been picked. I'm just saying that out loud.
This is the one I think about.
Yeah,
and this is because it stands out from my childhood.
I've had to be honest. I haven't deliberately looked for one that is not in. This is a match that stands out for me. And the other thing is, and again mentioning the unmentionable, this was a triple main event, and you know, The Rock versus Benoit was one of them, and the other one was Undertaker versus Angle, and this is the one that really, I think, made that show. It is not just the best match, but a great show. But just the way that you've got to remember, 2000 and 2001 was the rise of Triple H to being, you know, what we know today. Whereas, as you've referenced earlier, Jericho had just come in; he was just becoming what the fans would know him to be. And this is the match that really showed what Jericho can do. And, you know, I think this elevated Triple H as well. It made him a little bit more, showed he could wrestle, showed he could perform in different matches, different match types. I just think everything about it was absolutely brilliant. And you've got the way that it was built up with Jericho playing the mind games on Triple H, which is always good. You've got the cerebral assassin suddenly having Jericho playing the sending flowers to Stephanie and making it look like it was Angle, and you know, that little connotation of humor leading into a brilliant match. I definitely think this is Jericho's greatest match of all time.
It's funny because I look at your match. I remember the end. That's where Jericho just fails to meet the count, but I don't remember any of the rest of the match.
Okay, well, like I say, it might have personal meaning to me because it was one of my favorites at the time and all-time favorite matches. But if you don't remember, maybe you should go back and watch it.
And was there a belt on the line in this match? Was it just pride? Just purely pride?
It was pure hatred, which is sometimes good. You don't need a belt to have this personal animosity between the two. Jericho hated Triple H, possibly because of what I've referenced earlier in terms of he wants to be the man. He wants to be the one who the crowd cheer for and love. And Triple H hated Jericho because he thought he was the one messing around with Stephanie and playing the mind games and playing the little tricks on him. It was just something different.
So Jericho was the heel during this run, right?
Oh no, Jericho was definitely the face.
So Jericho's the face, but you just said but it just seems like they really hate each other. And the way you described it is it's during Jericho's jealous era, but you then just called him a babyface.
I'm saying it was lead on to what would come later, showing how he can be jealous and that he wants to be Triple H, but he can do it in a babyface way. Whereas Triple H at the time was the ultimate heel. Anyone who was in the ring with him, no matter what they were doing, was going to be the face.
I just think this is during the era, the stink of Triple H during this era where he squashes everyone and he always can just squash Jericho. And I just don't. Yeah, I mean,
this was definitely not a squash. Jericho held his own throughout the match. Even at the end of the match, it was so close. It was both of them down, reaching a 9 count. They're on their feet, and Jericho just loses his feet in at the end. The amount of blood in this match for the time was great. It was an instant classic, and it's one of the best matches I've ever seen. Not just a Jericho match, one of the best matches. Yours is just a throwaway,
I went back and watched my one today, and I was still amazed by how just amazingly. It's what I like about it is it's during gets towards the end of the Attitude Era at this point, but it's non-stop. But it's not a spot fest. It's just really good wrestling for 14 minutes. It's like a masterclass in how to do this. I think people should. I think the young wrestlers, especially with Survivors coming out, and we've got these triple threat matches coming up, they should watch this match and understand this is how you do a triple threat match without relying on all the cliches of a triple threat match.
I'm not seeing what you're saying. I remember it as a very typical triple threat match. I do remember times outside where they're going one-on-one.
It was 2 out of 3 falls. There's 2 belts on the line. That's not exactly typical.
You said it was a unique triple threat match. I'm not saying the stipulation was typical. And again, the fact that there were 2 belts on the line, the fact that Kurt Angle lost both the belts in the same match, that's what people came away remembering from that, not Jericho's performance.
See, I come out remembering Jericho being the guy that gets a mic at the start and his music playing at the end. Ultimately, he's the winner. Again, he's the one who gets the final fall. He's the winner of that match.
No, I think actually Kurt Angle is the winner for the match because it pushed him on to the world title picture. He was the one who benefited from that. Jericho didn't really. I mean, for the next question, when we're saying what's the best IC reign, are you going to be using that one?
He didn't win the IC belt. He won the European belt in this match.
Sorry. Well, I just think it's forgettable what happened to Jericho after that, as I've just proven. Whereas with mine, it was.
It's not about what happened after. It's about the match. It's not about the sort of fallout or the beginning.
The match. It's not about the match is not memorable. The match is not memorable except for what happens to Angle.
I want to see this go up on a poll. Twitter poll, not on a poll like Brod likes to put things on a poll in wrestling matches. I want a Twitter poll. We can get whatever happens here because I'd imagine Brod's not going to like my choice because I spoke about he who should not be named and tried to do it in a grown-up way. But I think
the problem is, Jason, instead of watching your match, if you go back and watch my match, you might actually change your opinion.
I should go back and watch it, but I definitely would. I just think I've never enjoyed a Triple H match that much, to be honest.
So I've come to a conclusion.
Remember, it's about the argument, not the match itself.
I don't like either match. So you can't really blame me. I don't like either match. One for obvious circumstances, and the other, no one knows what Chris Jericho versus Triple H is. So I am basing it off the argument. I just want to make that abundantly clear. I think Mike defended his better, and I think he made stronger counter arguments, and I am being neutral here, even considering the circumstances that you put me in. So I based on the argument, I am giving the point to Mike, so Mike leads 2-1.
I do recommend, by the way, even though I've lost, I do recommend, just because of the viruses coming out, it's worth going back and watching this, even though it's got him in it, that man. It's worth watching to see what they're going to do at Survivor Series with these triple threat matches coming up. It's going to be interesting.
I will also state for the record, I'm not adverse to talking about the topic of Benoit, but it's very hard to reward anything with Benoit. I've mentioned previously when we had the old format of the podcast, just so listeners know that I can be very neutral on the subject, that TLC 3 is actually my favourite of the first 3 TLC matches, which feature the tag team of Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit, and that was before my era, FYI. I was a huge Benoit fan and gutted when that happened. So I just want to say for the record, I have always admired Benoit's work, but it's very challenging to talk about. So, question number 4. Jericho has held 10 Intercontinental Championships. So my question is, what was his best Intercontinental title reign? And for the record, yes, it was 9 in WWE and 1 in New Japan. Mike?
I've gone for Benoit's 4th title reign.
Jericho's.
Wow.
We're going off on a tangent now.
Yeah, I'm trying not to mention the name. I'm looking at this thinking, how can I talk about this without mentioning him? Jericho's 4th title reign, which unfortunately does begin with a win of Benoit in a ladder match. Won't talk too much about it. I wish we could. I think at the time we all had different thoughts upon it. But what he went on to do at No Way Out, the 4-way match where he defended one of the forgotten 4-way matches, which is one of those occasions where you don't just have 2 people in the ring and the 2 wrestling outside. You've also got Guerrero and X-Pac in that match. He would defend the title, then go on to WrestleMania 17, the greatest pay-per-view of all time. No question, I will argue that with everything I've got. He opened WrestleMania, which is a amazing spot to be in, and defended against William Regal, who was a fantastic wrestler, and eventually lost it to Triple H. We're talking 2001 here, a lot of people's greatest years in wrestling, and he held it from Royal Rumble to after WrestleMania, so a lengthy title reign in what was a title swap year, a great title reign.
Interesting, and also NXT TakeOver New York, if that counts as a pay-per-view, is better than WrestleMania 17. In fact, WrestleMania 90 is better than WrestleMania 17. Fight me. So
we're going on a tangent. I will be judge.
Fuck it, I'm tagging myself in, Jason. I'm making my debut. Jason, I'm joking. You get to go now.
Yeah, so I am going for, I think, for me, Jericho's held the IC belt a lot of times. A lot of them are very forgettable, short reigns, and not much actually happened, if we're honest. But he sort of racked them all up, and some of them were like weeks long. The one that stood out for me is when he beat China for the belt in 1999. Or did he? Because actually they ended up having a shared reign. What I like about this is it's his best because it's the most interesting to me. It was intergender wrestling and a shared reign, which is very, very historic. And they did some great work together in terms of during that storyline. And it's also the start of what got Jericho over, as I referred to earlier. And then he ended up having sole ownership of the belt before he lost it to Angle, setting up the match I just talked about at Mania. So for me, it's Jericho with China and then on his own with the belt.
Do any of you know anything of Jericho's wrestling career outside of 1999 to 2003?
I looked it up, to be honest.
I gotta be honest.
I looked over his title reigns.
Well, there's better matches and there's better gimmicks. I mean, come on, guys. I'm just saying.
Well, hang on. What do you want us to use? Greatest gimmick? Do you want us to go with Lion Tamer before that, or
anything outside of 1999-2003? Come on, guys. This is boring right now.
I looked at his IC reigns and I read over every single one of them, and I was I did the research on this, and I was like, these are all pretty uneventful title reigns.
I would disagree. But anyway,
Rod, I nearly went for the New Japan reign. That was the other one that I was looking at. Those two. So if you want to talk about more recent, that was my second choice and my backup. I was thinking of developing the run he had in New Japan.
I mean, I'm just stirring the pot up because you two are very cozy in your 1999 to 2003 bet, and it just has to be said. So anyway, it doesn't really matter, because I'm not competing. I feel very competitive today. Fight, guys.
So, Mike, your one was his fourth reign.
It's
And
yes.
did you say he had a long reign because he held it from Rumble to Mania? Or Rumble to after Mania?
Long for the time. We're not talking Pat Patterson like, but
Well, that's how
you
many
know,
months?
I think it was over
Months?
90 days, which
Wow. This is what I define with Jericho. So many of his reigns are like, oh, you won the belt for a week, you won it for a month, you ran it for a couple of months. Like none of them really amount to much of anything. It's good, but they saw him as like a credible like champion to have the belt, I guess. But then he would just pass it on to someone else, and then a few months later he'd win it back. And that's why I didn't choose any of the more recent ones after the first one. And like I say, talking about his last one, I just thought, yeah, he had loads of he had some good matches, but none of the reigns mean a huge amount. Whereas the first one was historic.
The first one was historic because, again, you're using the same argument. China was part holder of the belt. I mean, it was all about China. It was all about the first woman to hold a men's title. It was all about her.
It doesn't work unless Jericho is. I mean, you look at like the background of China. Some people refuse to work with her. Jeff Jarrett put the belt on her. We're doing some terrible gimmick like best housekeeping match with frying pans. Jericho and her had a credible series of matches and then had a credible co-run with the belts before Jericho owned the belt on his own and went into that feud with Kurt Angle, an amazing wrestler. And the thing with Jericho, and you look at his history, it's very easy to say, oh, it was all about the other person. If Jericho's not there, it doesn't matter for the other person. He always pulls his share of the weight. He's always there doing it. And that's bringing people up, working with someone more established or working with newer stars. He's always there. And for me, this is, I'm so sorry, because it helped make China a legitimate wrestler in, I guess, what we call the men's division at the time. And that's because of Jericho's work.
Yeah, I think with your choice, he wins the title. He shares the reign with China. He finally gets the title, I believe, in a triple threat with Bob Holly.
He was over at the time, you fat bastard.
It's Bob Holly, you know. But Bob Holly's idea for his own gimmick was, let me win the world title and I'll beat everyone, as Bruce Pritchard loves to say. It wasn't about Jericho. It wasn't the greatest reign. If it was a good reign, it was about China. Whereas mine is a long series against excellent wrestlers. You bring Eddie Guerrero into it, he beats him. You bring X-Pac into him in 2001, who's one of the best underrated wrestlers of the time. He beats him. He defends it in the first match of WrestleMania 7, and I know Broad thinks that there's other better ones, but especially at the time. You go back to watching that.
Don't you mean WrestleMania X7?
What did I say?
WrestleMania 7.
WrestleMania 17.
A young Jericho.
Very young Jericho, yes.
WCW Jericho.
Yeah.
Wait, was he even around?
Not even that, no,
ECW, wasn't he?
No, WrestleMania 7, he would have been young. He probably wasn't even wrestling. If he was anywhere, he might have been somewhere in
CMLL
Canada
at the time.
or Mexico. Yeah, he wouldn't have even been there.
Anyway,
But
we're getting sidetracked. Sorry.
So WrestleMania 17. I mean, in the build up to that match, as the Intercontinental Champion, he manages to piss in Regal's pot of tea and get that over. He can get anything over at the time. They're going to have a really good match in the opening match of WrestleMania, which is an amazing spot to be in. And when he finally loses it in the middle of 2001, it's to Triple H. And I keep harping on about how 2000 and 2001 were the best years in wrestling. It was the best years in wrestling. It was the best years for Triple H. It was his rise. So this was really, even losing the title to Triple H, being in the ring with him, elevated him. And later that year, he would go on to be the first ever undisputed champion on the back of this run.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. Like, he had some great matches, but again, I'm just like, it's just one of many short title reigns that Chris Jericho had with the IC belt. But I read over them and I was like, oh yeah, he won all these belts and lost them all, and nothing actually really mattered overall. I think he could have still gone on to have that great run later on and become the undisputed champion. He wouldn't have needed all these IC belts, and that's my point. I'm more about how long did you hold the belt, or how historic and meaningful was it? The run you're talking about was just another guy with the belt.
But you keep talking about length. How long was your title reign compared to mine? I feel like they're very similar.
Well, he won. No, it's longer than that because he won it in '99 and held it on until just before Mania. So it would have been longer than your one. So it was actually
around 90 odd
No,
days?
more like 5 months, I think.
5 months. So not that much longer. You're talking an extra month.
2 months.
When you talk about length,
months have about 30 days, Mike. So we're talking more like 2 months.
I don't think we're talking about all-time long reigns. And the length of the reign doesn't matter how good it is. It's what he does with the reign. In your reign, he shared the Intercontinental title for over half of it. And, you know, the main feud was China and Bob Holly. With mine, That's who he lost it to.
He had a feud with Kurt Angle, who he lost it to, but that's
Yeah.
a feud.
So with mine before he loses it, you've got Regal, you've got Guerrero, you've got X-Pac, you've got He Who Must Not Be Named. At the time, for him to hold it that long in that era of title switches, and remember what's happening with the world title, they're switching every single pay-per-view. This is kind of a long term at that time. You might not think now, but it is.
Yes, what you're saying is he had the chance to work with some of the best wrestlers of all time
and beat them,
and have great, but he had the best wrestlers in the ring helping him, whereas I'm talking about he took someone like China and actually made them, because
China took someone like him and made them. China that point was established.
I don't think she was not established. She'd only just had a couple of matches with men at this point. This is what actually got her over as an actual legitimate threat in the men's division and having matches with other men.
She'd had a long series of matches with, like you said, Jeff Jarrett. She was in the ring with Mick Foley, Mankind, who was, one of the first.
Those weren't matches. She got involved in them physically, but she didn't actually have matches with them. And the Jeff Jarrett thing was a comedy match.
She did have matches with them. She had pay-per-view matches with Jeff Jarrett, and she had number one contender matches that she actually won with Mankind.
No, your memories might be slightly better than mine on that one, but the Jeff Jarrett stuff was definitely just comedy and silliness.
It was, for what it was, it might have been comedy and silliness, but it was something that's memorable.
If I said to Broad, can you remember that full title reign that Jericho had? And he'd be like, nope.
Well, it's before, both of them were before my time, so no. Point is redundant.
I think the point is
let's wrap this up, guys.
My point is, if you get a perfect memory historian and say, what do you remember about the first title reign? He'll say China. What do you remember about the fourth title reign? It'll say great matches.
No, I don't think that. I think the fourth one, I'd be like, oh, it's one of his other title reigns against some good wrestlers. Whereas I think the first one is Jericho had one of the most historic title reigns of all time in terms of it involving a woman and being a shared title reign. And that's the one that stands out to the majority of people.
Okay, so I'm going to end it. Right. So, this is tough. Purely because I wasn't around. Well, I was around. I was alive. I wasn't a wrestling fan during either reign. I don't remember Jericho China at all. I do remember some of the matches. Because I've watched stuff back from the Attitude Era for context purposes. I have watched some matches back from the Attitude Era, and I do remember that ladder match, and I remember the match with William Regal that Mike spoke about. I think Mike made clear references to what was involved in his title reign. I think he also made a very valid point about that title reign was mostly about China. And also, just a quick correction, Chris Jericho's first title reign started December 12th, 1999. China only became co-champion halfway through in January 3rd, 2000, apparently. So
yeah, that's wrong. I don't know what you're reading up, but she clearly won the belt from Jarrett and then went into the feud with Jericho. So I don't know what.
No, she won the belt from Jarrett first.
Right.
Isn't there over a year between those matches?
No, about half a year. So she won the belt from Jarrett on October 17th, 1999. She dropped it to Chris Jericho December the 12th, 1999, and they co-held it in January 3rd, 2000, before Jericho won it in a triple threat match against China and Hardcore Holly at the Royal Rumble in the year 2000. So I'm just going by what Wikipedia says.
Yeah, that's wrong.
But I doubt anyone.
It was in December 99 where they ended up holding the belts together.
December 28th, 1999. Oh, the match happened December 28th, 1999.
The match happened December 12th.
No, the match happened December 28th.
Well, we can disagree. I know I'm right, so whatever.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. I thought Mike had the stronger argument. Mike wins. So there you go. Mike is leading 3 points to 1. So Jason, you really need to win the point here, or else it's going to be very difficult in the speed round. So,
well, I know Mike's gone for Fandango, so I'm all right here.
I considered it.
So, Fight Forever Fantasy Booking. Out of all of his great opponents through his illustrious career, pick one that he should have to fight forever with. And please pick someone outside of 1999 to 2003.
Well, who's up first?
Who started first? Jason. Jason, you're first.
I'm first. So I've gone for the fact that you said it's fantasy booking, and as long as he's fought them, I can pick them. So I've gone for Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. They had those 2 matches, obviously very, very much at the end of Steamboat's career in terms of the match at WrestleMania and then the follow-up match. But for me, if I can pick these 2 going against each other, and I'd go back to brash, annoying, I guess maybe more like Mike's talked about how much he likes Jericho. I'm having a heel Jericho against the beautiful, perfect babyface that is Ricky Steamboat during the 80s. These 2, Jesus, the matches they would have, and the way they could tell good classic babyface versus complete dickhead Jericho in a feud would be perfect.
Fair enough. And I actually like those matches with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
They were amazing for their time, weren't they?
Yeah, like it was just very surprising. Like it's the first time I saw Steamboat, and I was like, "Oh wow, this guy can go, and he's old." No offense to Steamboat, Mike.
I've decided to take the judges' idea and go away from 1999 to 2003 and actually go before that. So when he was in WCW, Jericho had a feud with a man that you all know, and the reason I want them to fight forever is at one point Jericho walked into the ring with a large piece of paper and started to read move after move after move that he knew. He actually named 1004, and I'd love to see a match.
Mike, can you name them all now?
I can't. Number 1 was arm
drag. It'll make a bad podcast. We already had one bad one we had to cut.
Okay, yeah, but I just want to name the first 10 just so you get an idea of his 1004 moves. So he started off with an arm drag, then an arm bar, then the moss-covered 3-handled family gazandle, then an arm bar, then the Sachukawen spinning nerve hold, a body slam, a drop toe hold, an armbar at number 8. Number 9 would be a shooting star staple super press, and number 10 was a right-handed armbar. This was absolutely amazing viewing. They went to commercial, they came back. He was on to number 27, which was hip toss. 28 was sleeper hold. 29 was atomic leg drop, and he would go on to name 1004 holds. Now, Dean Malenko, who I'm obviously referring to as an opponent, had 1000 wrestling holds. Imagine, they fought forever, hold after hold after hold after hold, and after 1000 holds, finally, Jericho has 4 more, which just happened to be the flapjack, the flying arm scissors, the forearm uppercut, and finishes off, gets the tap with an armbar. Wow.
Right, do I just
okay, right. I really want to just hear this argument. This is fucking great. I actually love both picks.
So yeah. I'm thinking they had the matches. Think of it more modern, Brod. So you can play with it. So 2009 is when they had the Steamboat Jericho storyline, and yeah, as you said, even then they had 2 really good matches where people were like, Jesus Christ, how old is Ricky Steamboat and how can he still wrestle like that? But imagine WrestleMania 3 era Steamboat or the hour-long matches he had with Ric Flair, and you put that in there with arsehole Chris Jericho. Just like the promos that Jericho would cut against Steamboat and the matches they could have, they could go for they could easily do an hour every night.
They could, and the Dragon could hit the monkey flip, followed by the neck breaker, followed by the reverse mat slam, followed by the sliding leg trip. The point is that mine has an actual reason for them to fight forever, because this list of moves goes on forever. Yours might be a good match, but eventually it's just a good match that keeps on dragging, and there's no point for them to keep on going. Dean Malenko and Chris Jericho, okay, they did have matches. The crowd reactions were some of the best that WCW ever saw. I don't know, Brod, if you watched WCW back then, but at one point...
What's a WCW? Is that Women Crush Wednesday?
Yes.
That would have probably kept them going past 2001. At one point, Jericho was fighting a mystery opponent in a mask, and when it turned out to be Dean Malenko, you're talking about crowd reactions. They were absolutely, it was an incredible moment. They had great chemistry. They had an amazing mixture of comedy, when they were doing the armbar, followed by the hip toss, followed by the sleeper hold, followed by the atomic leg drop. We move on to 85. We've got the Jericho right-handed armbar, followed by the Jericho left-handed armbar. I mean, how many moves does your match have?
I need to step in here. The basis of your argument, Mike, is that you will have a checklist of 1004 moves, and in every match, you will keep checking off every move they've done until they've completed the complete list of 1004 moves. That seems to be the basis of your argument. And then also your point.
Malenko said he had 1,000 holds, and Jericho said he had 1,004, and I want them to fight forever, just so I can see if they were true. Would Jericho end with the jumping knee strike? I would want to know this.
On that, and then also you said they had a lot of matches, and I think you said we've seen them wrestle a lot. We've seen a lot of it already. Whereas we've been teased. We've had a cock tease of Jericho versus Steamboat. We haven't had the full thing, and you can imagine what they could do if they were fighting forever. How much they could evolve that style. If we're talking peak era Steamboat and Jericho. I just think, I know it's a slight reference to Steamboat and Flair and the stuff that they did, but I think Jericho, when you look at his actual athletic ability, it was better than Flair in the ring. So you could even build on those series of matches, which everyone said were the best series of matches of all time, because you put Jericho in there versus peak Steamboat. For me, I think that's wrestling nirvana for most people.
I think Wrestling Nirvana would be when we finally get to 952 and see the double sidewalk slam. We'd all be wondering, how are they going to hit the belly-to-belly double chicken wing suplex? We'd actually be looking forward to the next move just to seeing what it is. Again, there's a point to mind fighting forever. You just have two people who happen to be having a good match, and eventually...
I've said how great the promo here that Jericho would be cutting against babyface Ricky Steamboat. He'd be insulting his wife, his name, talking about kung fu. He'd be doing all the stuff you'd expect from Jericho.
And what would Steamboat be doing in return? Standing there smiling like he did at every single promo?
That's what works for Steamboat. His thing is, I'm a pure babyface, and the heel works off of that, and that's how it works.
And my thing is that you have pure wrestlers doing wrestling hold after wrestling hold after wrestling hold, and giving us a list of what moves they're going to use.
No storyline, no build, no
massive storyline. This was the whole conspiracy theory. In fact, if you want build, Jericho was so certain that there was a conspiracy theory that he went to the White House and demanded a meeting with the president. And when the president said no, that meant that the president was in on the conspiracy too. Dean Malenko teamed with the president. You want storyline? You want build? Oh my God, he was at the White House. How much more do you want? Oh, I know what more you want. You want a double forward Russian leg sweep, which is 993. We're getting close to the end.
I don't know how I argue with someone who just keeps rattling off a list of moves.
Armbar, exploder, suplex, crucifix, powerbomb. I really want to see that one. That's after around 2 hours.
So I'm putting out yours is a bit dull. It's just ticking off a checklist. But for mine, I don't know what your main argument against my matches are. Apart from, you must acknowledge these would be amazing.
They would be amazing, and then they would stop being amazing and stop being repetitive, because Jericho would probably hit a lion salt followed by a lion tamer followed by a code breaker, and then maybe another lion salt, but you wouldn't see a nerve strike or a tilt-a-whirl backbreaker drop. I mean, come on.
But, so on your point, if Jericho's got a list of 1,004 moves, can he not get everyone of those out against Steamboat, who would be a more entertaining match than Dean Malenko?
Well, he could, but every time he does one of those moves...
So he could use all of the moves you've talked about, which is one of your main arguments.
So I reckon the Dragon had maybe, say, 40, 50 moves, which gives you 1,054. Mine has 2,004 moves. You're looking at the fine...
So there's no duplicate. There's no duplicate in Malenko and Jericho's moves. They have a complete unique list.
He may have mentioned armbar more than once, but, But
Dean Malenko doesn't use armbar.
Sorry?
Dean Malenko would not use an armbar.
Did you not watch Battle of the Beach 96? Have you never seen Dean Malenko with an armbar? Wow.
All right. Guys. I mean, this is going straight into moves too much, but wrap this up just for time.
I don't know what else to argue. I mean, it's a kind of hard argument to make. I'm talking about two of the best wrestlers of all time, wrestling each other forever in long matches where they can keep innovating and with great build and storyline around it because of who the characters are. You're talking about Dean Malenko is a very good wrestler, but he's like, you say that Ricky Steamboat's not got much going on. Dean Malenko was a charisma-free zone. He's just a robot.
Wow, Mike.
And as the ultimate twist, having hit the 2004 moves, as I'm scanning forward here, at no point do I see the Texas Cloverleaf. Could that be the final twist? That having hit 2004 moves, they're both out, and suddenly Dean Malenko finishes with his finishing move, having followed the single-arm DDT.
But he's not using any other match. Stuff. He saves the Texas Cloverleaf's finisher for the final match.
You want to see fight forever. I want to see these guys fight forever because I want to have my checklist and sit in Belushi's with WWL, ticking off and ticking off and ticking off and being happy. And it's like a Where's Wally? You're trying to spot the over-the-shoulder chin lock or the guillotine power bomb, whereas you just have a good match.
All right. Oh man, I love both these ideas. I love both these arguments. Boy. I really like the fact that Mike said there was more of a story in his one. I think he countered well. I love the move argument. I think that was not only hilarious but actually quite fun. I was really more sold on Mike's, which is a shame because I absolutely love the Jericho Steamboat answer too. I love them both equally. But
your storyline that you like is it's about moves, a list of moves. Just so I'm clear.
No, Mike made.
What else did he say? What else has he got? What's the rest of his story apart from a list of moves?
Sometimes that's what you need. Sometimes the simplest stories are the best. Now stop arguing because you've lost, Jason.
Bullshit.
You're 4-1 down. Don't argue with the referee or I'll deduct a point off of you. I'm making that official. So, Mike is leading 4-1 after the main round. So, we're on to our 3-count round now, which is our speed round. Basically, our 3-count round is where our competitors will have 3 questions to answer and there'll be either or questions. For instance, who has the best hair, Mr. Kennedy or Jeff Hardy? I have no ideas why they came to my head first. The first person to say their answer will argue first, and the person who's the last to answer will have the other answer to argue. They'll have 30 seconds to argue each answer and then a minute to fight each other, and then after that I will make the decision on which argument was better. Are you ready, gentlemen, for the speed round?
Yes.
Okay, Jason, I'll take that as yes too.
I'm still sulking.
You're still sulking. Well, you got 3 rounds to save it into a tiebreaker. Mike, you only need 1. So
a conspiracy when I see one, just like Jericho.
Well, you just proved Mike's point then. Which is the greatest accomplishment? AEW World Champion or WWE Undisputed Champion?
Undisputed
WWE.
Champion.
I heard Mike first.
Of course you did.
Oh wow, what a salty boy. Oh my god, that's your theme song. You're just a salty boy. Anyway, sorry, Mike.
Salty boy. I like it.
Let Mike argue. Mike, you got 30 seconds starting from just wait a second. Now.
Jericho beat The Rock and Austin in the same night. He would go on to mention that the next night in Raw, and the next year on Raw, and the next 5 years on Raw. It was such an amazing accomplishment that 10 years later it was still referenced in promos. That's just the actual what he did on the night, without even mentioning the fact he became the first undisputed champion. We're talking 60, 70 years of title reigns and title lineals, and suddenly he unifies the titles. He would go on to have a reign that would include matches against Angle,
Stop. Jason, you got 30 seconds.
So in AEW, they pretty much built the entire company around him. He was their headline star. He's the leader of a new era, and he won his first world title clean in the middle of the ring. And he continues to have the entire company built around him during that time period. I mean, that's all I need to say because I can tear apart Mike's argument.
Cool. Fight.
So, Mike, just to talk about your one. So, you're talking about why it's the most historic. He had 2 cheap wins with a shitload of outside interference. Then he had an awful reign where he was made to be Stephanie's bitch. And then he lost the belt to Triple H and in a really not very good match where everyone knew he was going to lose. So, why it's quite good that he was crowned undisputed champion, it meant nothing because they made him look like a little bitch boy the whole time.
With yours, they have a certain roster that they've got to pick who they want their world champion, and I think they've picked him because they want him to elevate somebody. With mine, they had 60, 70 years to do it, and eventually they chose Jericho of all the people to do it. And not only that, to repeat, he beat The Rock and Austin in the same night.
But he didn't really. It was a shitload of outside interference.
If you look at the record book that JR often references, it doesn't say beat Rock and Austin with a shitload of interference. I've never seen that line in the record book. He beat The Rock and Austin in the same night.
Then he had some really, every time he defended the belt, it was a cheap win. Nothing respectable about that reign.
I thought the question was what more historic, not what came afterwards.
That's why I just think it's
final. Stop. I did say which is the greatest accomplishment. AEW Championship or Undisputed Championship, not which is more historic. They can be tied together, but they're not necessarily the same. Tough. Very tough argument. I think Jason had the better of you there, Mike, so I'm going to give the point to Jason. So, Jason, you're only 4-2 behind. You excited?
I know. I've seen the way this is. I've seen the
Question number 2. That might need some editing. Which of these feuds were legendary? Shut up. Which of these feuds were more legendary? Dean Malenko in WCW or Shawn Michaels in 2008?
Dean Malenko.
Fine, that's absolutely fine. Jason spoke first, so he gets to go first. Shawn Michaels in 2008. Starting now.
I mean, if you look at the list of Jericho's greatest matches of all time, there's 3 Shawn Michaels matches in there. Not many people refer to a Dean Malenko one. That's why I went for HBK. And you think of this, the ladder match. They had amazing matches, and they actually elevated each other during that feud. Just 2 of the top workers in the world at the top of their game, and they put a great drama in there with the stuff involving HBK's wife.
Yeah. Mike, you get to go.
Okay, mine has a good 3-4 months WCW storyline. It starts off with the conspiracy theory. We go on to the man with 1004 holds, which I've proven I can list if you want me to. We have comedy, we have crowd reactions, we have masks being ripped off, surprise entrance, double crosses. You just have a very standard, I hate you, you hate me, let's have a fight.
Fight.
So, I mean, you say it's down to I hate you, you hate me, let's fight. Jericho punched his wife in the face. That goes beyond pure anger. That was pure rage in this feud, and it involved a world title towards the end of it.
Yeah, he might have punched his wife in the face, but he didn't do a side headlock takedown followed by an armbar, followed by a front neck chakra. I mean, come on. And we're only 300 in here. Look, mine has a list that is referenced this day. And in fact, I just clicked to me. He comes up with this list, and then 10 years later, his gimmick is a list.
What do people remember more? Jericho popping HBK's wife in the face and that feud they had for most of the year, which won feud of the year in most polls existed, or that thing he did with Dean Malenko where Dean actually ripped off a mask and was a bit angry?
I think people remember the man of 1004 holds as more of a name than the man who popped his wife, as you say. I just think mine has a better storyline. It has more aspects to it. It's involved the president. They went to the White House.
Stop. This one's a tight argument. I think Jason had a better opening statement. I think the man with the 1004 holds is actually more memorable than Jericho. I think it was accidentally punching Shawn Michaels' wife, if I remember, at SummerSlam 2008.
He went for HBK, who moved out the way, and Jericho ended up hitting her in the face. It added to the many layers of the feud.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just saying, I don't think it was intentional, which you kind of implied in your argument.
Jericho then gloated about it.
Jason, I am the ref. Do not disrespect the ref. So, because you just disrespected the ref, I'm going to... No, I'm joking. Oh, God, I have to give it to Jason.
What?
Yeah, I think Jason made a clear argument right from the off. So, I think you wasted time listing holds. It's funny in the 5th argument. You only got a minute. It's a bit of filibustering. Jason, you're only 1 behind now. Could the ultimate comeback happen? Find out in the next question. So, Chris Jericho has a faction called the Inner Circle. And as he teased in a press conference, a woman may join the Inner Circle. Which woman should join Chris Jericho's Inner Circle out of the following 2? Bea Priestley or Jamie Hayter?
Bea Priestley.
Okay, Jason, you have to go for Jamie Hayter. Mike, you get to go first.
I think it was referenced in a recent promo that Bea Priestley doesn't care about her opponent. She doesn't care what damage she inflicts. She doesn't care about anyone except what's going on around her or what benefits her. And when you talk about what benefits her, being in the Inner Circle is what benefits her. It fits her perfectly. She's evil. She's got the look. She's got the ability. She would fit in perfectly with that group.
Jason.
Yeah, I think I prefer Jamie. I think Jamie's actually the better worker and actually shows a bit more attitude. I mean, you're looking at AEW, but I'm thinking about the work that I've seen her do in Eve, where she was the ace of Eve and some of her other indie work. I think she's actually a better talker as well from what I've seen of her. She would fit in more because they need a talker and B is not a talker. So Jamie, for me, fills more gaps.
Right, fight.
I can't believe you said they need a talker when they've got MJF, they've got Jericho.
They haven't got MJF.
I think they kind of do.
That's not the argument. Go on.
I don't think they need a talker. What they need is somebody with the attitude, with the history of hurting people, with the look. I think she definitely has what that group needs. She fits in well. She has everything that they need.
I think it would be really bad if you brought a woman into the inner circle and you just made her a monotone, like someone who didn't talk, sort of background character. She needs to be Jericho's equal and leading that group and talking. And Jamie can actually do that while looking like a badass in the ring and just looking better and fitting into the overall gimmick of like being a rock star like Y2J wants to be.
I think they can both talk, and B comes in with an established storyline.
B never talks. I've seen Jamie talk on the indie circuit a lot. B never does interviews or promos. She just stands there looking mean.
So don't you think that when she finally gets to talk, it would be something we get to see?
No, I think there's a
look forward to seeing.
I think there's probably a reason she doesn't talk, whereas Jamie just has that swagger.
Stop. Yeah, the winner is clear to me here. Jason, you sold me on Jamie Hayter miles ahead of Mike. Sorry, Mike, you definitely lose a point in this one. So it's 4 apiece.
And if you've not seen Jamie, I just recommend anyone listening, check out some of her work in Eve in particular. So you can find clips of her. She's really good. B's good as well.
I've been impressed with both in AEW. It's just Jamie's actually stood out, I think, for me. But anyway, that's by the by. I just felt you sold that more, Jason. So
marketing, baby.
Jason's such a knob. I know, I'm also a marketer. Anyway, that leads us on to a tiebreaker, which I didn't expect to happen, but I do have something written down this time. So, which entrance music is better? Judas by Fozzy or The Walls of Jericho?
Judas by Fozzy.
Okay, Jason, you have to go break it down. Walls of Jericho. All right. Mike, argue.
I'm not the biggest music fan, but I love that song. I think it's catchy. It actually, the fact that it's Jericho singing it, and it gives the person idea. The lyrics match Jericho's attitude. Walls of Jericho is just a generic, they gave Jim Johnson some words and said, come up with something like this. Doesn't really mean much specific to him. Okay, they named the move after him, but that was a case of adapting the move for the song, not the other way around.
Jason?
So, the Walls of Jericho, Break the Walls Down, that's iconic. That's named after his move. People know that song within 2 notes. It comes across like a rock star. There's the shouting. I think it's actually a brilliant rock song as well as a theme tune.
Okay, fight.
I don't think it's named after his move. I think the move is named the other way around. Whereas
his move was named first.
You think?
Why would you name a song Walls of Jericho for no reason?
It's kind of after the wonders of the world. Break down the walls of Jericho. It's a historic context.
Yeah, I definitely were going for that. Whereas Judas it's a nice rock song, but it's a rock song and it doesn't say anything about his character.
Jericho thinks that he's the best. He thinks the most important. So why wouldn't he sing his own theme song? I think it just matches everything perfect.
The lyrics don't actually relate to his current character. It's a nice rock song, but it's nothing to do with his actual character.
Why don't they relate? What lyric doesn't relate?
It's Judas. It's actually about being a complete loner and like hating everyone, but he's actually got a faction around him.
Do you know what the first line is?
Off the top of my head, God, it's been a while since I listened to it. Do you want to tell me?
It's just an attempt to spend the whole minute talking about my answer instead of yours. I'm glad you fell for it.
But you've got that. You start answering my points though. It's just a rock song.
So it's just a rock song sung by the guy who was walking through the ring claiming the best.
It's time. That's cunning, Mike. I liked it. I liked it a lot. Jason, you made some great arguments about, what the Walls of Jericho is and how that relates, and Judas is not related to the character. So, oh God, I can't believe. Oh, Mike, you're on a losing streak, buddy.
Oh my God. Woo! What do I have to do?
I'm so sorry. You've lost 7 speed round questions in a row.
This was my idea to not know the questions.
I know, right?
Oh wow!
It backfired on you. So congratulations, Jason. You've won 5-4 after the tiebreaker. How does it feel to come back from 4-1 down?
Mike fell into my trap the whole way. I knew what I was doing, like a masterful hero that I am.
No, you didn't. But congratulations, nonetheless, Jason. Well-deserved comeback. you might just be the king of the speed round. I want you versus Chad next. King of the speed rounds.
I do well on
And
the
the
speed round. I'd like to see my total scores.
I don't keep track. I will listen to every podcast back, and I'll keep track properly next time, and we'll have records somewhere down the line. Mike, I'm so sorry to do that to you. I'm so sorry.
I can't believe I've typed 1004 moves out today just to be foiled. I feel I've been hit by a leg wheel followed by a jumping knee strike. This is unacceptable.
Just for the record, on the fifth question, I would have picked Shawn Michaels as a Fight Forever.
Yeah.
I was debating it.
Very obvious.
I also looked at Rey Mysterio.
Yeah, Rey Mysterio is a good one. WCW, PG era, both great.
But then I was inspired by how much I love Ricky Steamboat, so I went for that.
Which question was your favourite? I'm just curious.
I was obvious. I had so much fun with that one, with the whole move list. I've always loved that, and finally got a chance to bring it into this podcast. So yeah, question.
Yeah, you seem like you know way too much about that list. It's quite creepy in some ways. And Jason,
I don't know. Actually, even though I lost the one about Le Champion losing his belt, I thought that was the most interesting one to work through. Okay, long-term booking ideas. Where are they going to go with this?
Yeah, I think overall, very, very strong rounds throughout the entire. This was a very tough one to judge. Usually, there
was no jobbers picking up space in this match.
Yeah, usually there's one or two that are difficult each week, but this time round, all nine are actually very difficult to judge.
You had your headliners here tonight, Prod. You had the guys that know how to put on a show.
Yeah, it's a shame that no championship was on the line for the Champion episode.
I would say that episode was the one I had the most fun with. I actually enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah. I really wanted to get into the fight as well, but unfortunately, I'm only just a humble referee, and I will fight Jason one day. I think.
What is Jason holding?
I don't know.
Looks like some tin foil.
I think you'll find this isn't good audio, but I am holding the title belt, baby.
Fuck you. Bear with me 1 second.
Uh-oh.
It's great.
For those of you listening, Brod has just walked off the screen. He's come back with the he's stolen the Fiend's belt. That's where it went.
The Universal Championship is now blue, so it's outdated. But I'm holding the Universal Championship. Great audio.
I've got the big gold belt.
Oh, I got a world champ. Who wants to be champion of the world when you could be champion of the universe, son? Guardians of the Galaxy are coming for me. Anyway, I will definitely have a title soon. We need a really shitty belt. Not the Universal title belt. That's too shitty. Love it though. Still the greatest purchase of WrestleMania, apart from my signed football jersey. So yeah. That was another round of Holy Shoot. Join us next week for more questions, banter. I didn't really prepare this. And thank you both for joining me on today's show as well, gentlemen. And for all listeners, if you like this podcast, then give us a subscription, subscribe, whatever. And also remember to follow us on Twitter at Holy Shoot Pod, like us on Facebook, and that's the bottom line because this pod says so.
This podcast is affiliated with the WWL Meetup Group. WWL, or Watch Wrestling London, get together with many fans to watch pay-per-view replays on Monday nights and attend live events across London, be it WWE, Progress, Rev Pro, Eve, and many more. It's a great way to watch wrestling with friendly people, and all are welcome to join. You can find out more at watchwrestling.london, or just Google Watch Wrestling London and you'll find the meetup page.
So, welcome to our first ever After Dark segment where we just chat absolute shit post-show. So, as I mentioned in the earlier part of the podcast, Jason has a new love of his life. Not his wife, but WWE_Asuka on Instagram, who is supposedly Asuka, but clearly not. But for the sake of purposes, this is Asuka you've been communicating right with, Jason.
Yeah, and this is confirmed. She's got 1,042 followers, so she sounds kind of legit.
I thought you were going to say she had 1,004 moves there.
oh, Mike, you're still here.
Do you want me
Mike.
to go?
No. I knew you were there, obviously.
Oh.
Yeah. Just for the podcast out there, Anyway, so as a bit of comedy, me and Jason decided to read through this conversation that he had with Asuka. Sounds like how William Regal mispronounced the manga back in the day when it was in manga. But do you want to go through what we said, Jason?
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, I think you've got to start because, she approached me first.
Yeah, I'm going to try and do it as Seth Rollins.
So, Broad as Seth Rollins as Asuka.
Yeah, me as Seth Rollins as Asuka. Hello, boo. I'm not, actually. I'm going to do it in the bland style of Seth Rollins. Hello, boo. How are you doing? Thank you for being a fan and liking my page, and God bless you. I sent you a request on here because you are a very beautiful and a huge and you seem to be a very nice person that I would like to know more about. God has a reason for all purpose. What?
So obviously I answered with, hey, how do you make that mist? Do you know the recipe for Great Muta is Black Death Mist? If you use that, there's nothing stopping you becoming a world champion.
Alright. Oh, shit. Where? Oh, wow. Thank you, smiley emoji. So, what's your name?
My friends call me Jace E. Cornette.
Well, nice to meet you, Jace. So, where do you live?
Dudleyville. What about you?
Thanks for being a fan of mine, and I would to have you a free ticket whenever I'm in your home zone. And if much free, we can hang out for dinner before my show. It's always been a huge pleasure to have time with my fans before my event.
This is strangely erotic.
That would be amazing. Maybe you can fly me to WrestleMania on Vince's jet. Then we can spend the week getting to know each other. And then she didn't respond for a little while, so I had to say something and say, sorry, was that greedy? How can we plan to meet? Raw is at the O2 in London next May. And then my friend who knows Japanese gave me the Japanese for Will You Marry Me, which I guess is Kenton Shita Kuriatasi.
See, I misread that as Kekon Shite, good to say, but...
One of us is right.
Yeah, probably. Laughing with tears down my eyes emoji. Don't worry, I have my ways. So I will love to know more about my fan.
What would you like to know, Empress? And at that point, we are waiting. Brod, what do you think she says?
I don't know. It's just...
You'd like to know my bank card number?
What did you respond with?
That's me. So after she said, would you like to know... So I'd love to know more about my fan. I just said, what would you like to know, Empress? And she's not been online for a little while. Oh, she's active. She was active 14 minutes ago. So maybe I'll get a response later today.
Maybe she's not listening to the Holy Shoot podcast.
She might be.
Promote the podcast to her, Jason. Maybe she'll come on the show.
We're hoping this ends with, I have to leave my wife, marry Asuka, and we get married in the ring at WrestleMania next year.
Yeah, sorry.
So join us next week's After Dark for the conclusion of this thrilling tale.
We should just go out there and message different fake wrestling accounts and pretend just for these scripts. Anyway.
Let's see how that goes.
Thanks for joining us in the After Dark. I hope you enjoyed our terrible promo reading. Maybe this is just a new segment we should do, terrible promo reading.
Maybe this is the future of the show, just this.
Ooh, I'm up for that. Mike, are you up for erotic fiction promo time?
I have never been so turned on in my whole entire life.
Is your partner in the room?
Mike, why have you started looking weird on the camera? You seem to have tilted the camera angle a little bit.
That's me leaning back while I'll let you two have the the spotlight here. Yes, she is in the room. She's currently watching Disney's Hercules.
Oh.
Which makes it seem like I have a daughter.
Loads of women like Disney.
Yes,
And men. Just to be, equal opportunities. Yeah. Well, fair enough.
Till next time, guys.
Yeah, I'm going to watch the leadership debate now, which is probably more important than
No,
this
what
debate.
Fully Loaded 2000?
You made that question very difficult for me. I'm just saying. Anyway, until next time, guys. Peace.
Out.